The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Marcus Chun pushed his cleaning cart down the empty corridor of the Whitmore Mathematics Building. It was nearly midnight, and the prestigious university had settled into its familiar silence. His worn sneakers squeaked softly against the polished floor as he approached Conference Room 204, where tomorrow's International Mathematics Symposium would begin. Through the glass doors, he could see the remnants of preparation. Whiteboards covered in complex equations lined the walls, and sticky notes with theoretical proofs scattered across tables like academic confetti. But it was the large equation dominating the central whiteboard that made him pause mid-step. The Goldbach variation. Marcus felt his breath catch as he recognized the elegant symbols that had haunted mathematicians for decades. Behind him, small footsteps approached. Emma, his 10-year-old daughter, appeared beside his cart with her worn backpack and a thermos of hot chocolate. She should have been asleep hours ago, but Marcus couldn't afford childcare for his night shifts. Her dark eyes, so much like her late mother's, followed his gaze to the whiteboard. She studied the equation with the same intensity other children reserve for video games. Morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows as Marcus returned to Conference Room 204, his cart loaded with fresh supplies. The symposium would begin in 2 hours, and distinguished mathematicians from around the world were already arriving. Dr. Harrison Webb, the conference organizer, swept into the room wearing an expensive suit and an air of self-importance. His silver hair was perfectly styled, and his eyes held the cold calculation of someone who measured worth by credentials and bank accounts. Webb barely glanced at Marcus as he began arranging name placards on the registration table. "Move that cart," Webb said sharply, waving dismissively. "We can't have maintenance equipment cluttering the space when the real scholars arrive." Marcus nodded quietly and shifted his supplies to the corner. He had learned long ago that arguing only made things worse. Webb continued his inspection, pausing at the central whiteboard where the Goldbach variation still dominated the space. "This problem has stumped the greatest minds for 30 years, Webb announced to his assistant. "Today we'll see if anyone here has the intellectual capacity to make even marginal progress." Emma sat in the hallway outside, her small notebook open as she worked through calculus problems that would challenge most graduate students. The conference room buzzed with intellectual energy as mathematicians filled every seat. Name tags bore prestigious affiliations from Harvard, Oxford, MIT, and the Sorbonne. These were the minds that shaped modern mathematics, their theories studied by graduate students worldwide. Dr. Webb stood at the podium, his chest swelling with pride as he surveyed his assembled audience. "Welcome to the annual International Mathematics Symposium," he announced, his voice carrying across the hushed room. "Today we tackle problems that have resisted solution for decades." He gestured toward the central whiteboard where the Goldbach variation waited like an ancient riddle. "This particular equation has humbled even our most brilliant colleagues. The mathematician who cracks this code will secure their place in history." Murmurs of excitement rippled through the crowd. Professors leaned forward in their chairs, already sketching preliminary approaches on their notepads. The challenge had been issued, and reputations hung in the balance. Marcus continued his quiet work along the room's perimeter, emptying wastebaskets and wiping down surfaces. To the assembled scholars, he was invisible background noise, just another service worker whose presence barely registered in their academic consciousness. But Emma had slipped inside during the opening remarks, her sharp eyes fixed on that magnificent equation. "Where in the world are you watching from? What time is it where you are?" This story of hidden genius unfolds as families everywhere face their own challenges. The memory hit Marcus like a physical blow as he watched the distinguished professors debate theoretical approaches. 5 years ago, he had stood in rooms just like this one, his MIT tenure-track position secure, his future bright with possibility. Dr. Marcus Chun had been rising fast in the mathematics department, his research on number theory earning international recognition. Emma was only 5 then, her mother Sarah still alive, their small family complete and happy. Everything changed the day he discovered the falsified data in his department head's grant application. Millions in research funding built on fabricated results, students' careers hanging on lies that would eventually crumble. He had tried to do the right thing, taking his evidence to the university administration. Instead of gratitude, he found himself blacklisted. The department head had powerful connections, and Marcus became the whistleblower who threatened the institution's reputation. His tenure was revoked. Job applications were mysteriously rejected. Sarah's cancer treatment drained their savings just as his academic career dissolved. When she died, Marcus was left with Emma in a janitorial position that barely covered their rent. Now he cleaned the offices where he once taught, invisible to the world that had cast him out. The afternoon break arrived with the gentle chaos of intellectual minds stretching their limits. Professors clustered around coffee stations, their conversations a symphony of theoretical discourse and frustrated sighs. The Goldbach variation remained untouched on the whiteboard, its elegant symbols mocking the assembled brilliance. Marcus refilled the water pitchers and arranged fresh notepads, while Emma wandered closer to the front of the room. Her small frame seemed almost ethereal against the backdrop of towering mathematical proofs, but her eyes held a focus that would have impressed any of the distinguished guests. She had inherited more than her mother's gentle features. Sarah's intuitive grasp of complex patterns lived on in Emma's quick mind, amplified by Marcus's methodical approach to problem-solving. While other children her age struggled with multiplication tables, Emma saw mathematical relationships as living, breathing entities. Dr. Webb noticed her approach and frowned deeply. "This is a professional conference, not a daycare center," he said, his voice cutting through nearby conversations. Children shouldn't be wandering around disturbing, serious academic work. Several professors looked up, their expressions ranging from mild curiosity to obvious irritation. Emma stopped mid-step, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment, but her gaze never left the central equation that seemed to pulse with hidden possibilities. Emma's small hand reached toward the whiteboard marker, but Dr. Webb's sharp voice stopped her cold. "Absolutely not," he declared, striding across the room with obvious indignation. "This equation represents decades of failed attempts by the world's most brilliant minds." The room fell silent as every conversation ceased. Professors turned to watch the confrontation, their expressions uncomfortable but curious. Webb positioned himself between Emma and the whiteboard like a guardian protecting sacred ground. "What makes you think a child could possibly understand something that has stumped Nobel laureates?" He continued, his tone dripping with condescension. "This isn't finger painting, young lady. This is serious mathematics that requires years of advanced study." Emma's voice was barely above a whisper when she finally spoke. "I can see the pattern," she said, her eyes still fixed on the equation. "The prime distribution follows a spiral sequence, not the linear progression everyone assumes." Webb laughed harshly, the sound echoing off the room's high ceilings. "Pattern recognition is not mathematical proof," he said dismissively. "Perhaps you should return to your coloring books and leave the real work to qualified professionals." Marcus felt his jaw tighten as he watched his daughter's shoulders slump. The protective instinct that had sustained him through 5 years of humiliation began to burn in his chest. "What part of this story resonates most with you? Share your thoughts as we witness a moment that will change everything." Emma stepped forward despite Webb's harsh words, her small hand trembling slightly as she picked up the red marker. The room held its collective breath as she approached the whiteboard with the determination of someone who had inherited both courage and brilliance. Instead of being intimidated by the complex symbols, she began writing beneath them with swift, confident strokes. Her approach was unlike anything the assembled professors had considered. Where they had pursued linear solutions, Emma drew elegant spirals that revealed hidden relationships between prime numbers. The mathematics flowed from her marker like music made visible. Each step built upon the last with crystalline logic that would have impressed graduate students, yet came from the mind of a 10-year-old who should have been worried about spelling tests and playground politics. Dr. Webb's confident smirk began to fade as he watched her work. Other professors leaned forward in their chairs, their initial skepticism giving way to growing amazement. The child wasn't just scribbling random numbers. She was systematically deconstructing a problem that had resisted solution for 3 decades. Marcus felt his heart hammering against his ribs as he watched his daughter display the mathematical genius she had inherited from both her parents. The conference room door opened quietly as Dr. Sarah Kellerman entered, her presence commanding immediate respect. As the keynote speaker and department head from Cambridge, she was among the most distinguished mathematicians in the room. Her silver hair was pulled back in an elegant bun, and her sharp eyes immediately focused on the extraordinary scene unfolding at the whiteboard. Emma continued her work, completely absorbed in the mathematical symphony flowing from her marker. The spiral patterns she had drawn were revealing connections that traditional approaches had missed entirely. Prime numbers danced through her equations like stars, forming constellations, each one finding its perfect place in the greater design. Dr. Kellerman approached slowly, her trained eye following every step of Emma's proof. The methodology was not only correct, but brilliantly innovative. The child was using advanced number theory concepts that most doctoral candidates struggled to grasp, yet applying them with an intuitive grace that suggested deep, fundamental understanding. "Who taught you this approach?" Kellerman asked softly, her voice filled with genuine amazement. Emma paused in her writing and turned toward the corner where Marcus stood frozen beside his cleaning cart. "My daddy," she said simply, her voice carrying across the hushed room like a revelation. "He showed me how numbers tell stories if you know how to listen to them." Every eye in the room turned toward Marcus, who stood motionless beside his cleaning cart like a deer caught in headlights. Dr. Kellerman's penetrating gaze studied his face with growing recognition, while Dr. Webb's expression shifted from confusion to dawning horror. "The janitor?" Webb sputtered, his voice cracking with disbelief. "You're telling me that maintenance worker taught you advanced number theory? That's absolutely impossible." But Dr. Kellerman was already moving toward Marcus, her brilliant mind connecting pieces that others had missed. The quiet dignity in his posture, the way his eyes had tracked Emma's mathematical reasoning, the subtle nods of approval as she worked through complex proofs. "Excuse me," she said gently, her voice cutting through the room's stunned silence. "Could you step forward, please? I'd like to discuss your daughter's remarkable solution." Marcus felt the weight of 40 distinguished gazes as he slowly approached the whiteboard. His hands, calloused from years of manual labor, trembled slightly as he studied Emma's work. She had not only solved the Goldbach variation, but had done so using theoretical frameworks he had developed during his MIT research. The equations on the board told a story of inherited genius, mathematical intuition passed from father to daughter, and brilliance that refused to be hidden beneath the uniform of a night janitor. If this is touching your heart, let us know where you're listening from and subscribe for more inspiring stories that remind us never to judge by appearances. Marcus stood before the whiteboard, his worn work clothes a stark contrast to the expensive suits surrounding him. The moment he had dreaded for 5 years had finally arrived. There would be no more hiding, no more pretending to be invisible. He picked up a blue marker and began writing beside Emma's solution, his movements fluid and confident. The mathematical symbols flowed from his hand like a native language, extending Emma's proof into territories that even she hadn't explored. "Watch this," he said quietly, his voice steady despite the thundering of his heart. Emma solved the Goldbach variation beautifully, but the real elegance lies in what her solution reveals about the underlying structure of prime distribution itself. The equations he wrote were breathtaking in their sophistication. Where Emma had shown one path to the solution, Marcus revealed an entire mathematical landscape that connected her discovery to fundamental principles of number theory. His notation was precise, his logic flawless, his insights profound. Dr. Webb's face had gone pale as he recognized the theoretical framework. Those weren't just random calculations. They were extensions of the Chun conjecture, groundbreaking research that had revolutionized modern mathematics 5 years ago. Research published by Dr. Marcus Chun of MIT. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the soft scratching of Marcus's marker against the whiteboard. Dr. Kellerman's eyes widened as the full scope of the revelation hit her. She had read every paper Dr. Marcus Chun had published, had cited his work in her own research, had wondered what happened to the brilliant mathematician who had simply vanished from academia. "You're him," she whispered, her voice filled with awe. "You're Dr. Marcus Chun. Your work on prime number distribution changed everything. Where have you been?" Marcus set down the marker and turned to face the stunned assembly. His shoulders straightened as 5 years of forced invisibility finally lifted from his frame. "I've been right here," he said simply, "cleaning your offices, emptying your trash, listening to brilliant minds discuss theories I helped create." Dr. Webb's face cycled through emotions like a broken traffic light. Confusion, recognition, horror, and finally, crushing embarrassment as he realized he had spent years treating one of mathematics' most innovative minds as subhuman. The janitor who had been invisible to them all was Dr. Marcus Chun, whose research had earned international acclaim before his mysterious disappearance. The man they had dismissed without a second thought had been teaching his daughter mathematics that surpassed their own understanding. Emma smiled proudly as her father reclaimed his place among the intellectual giants he had never truly left behind. 3 months later, Dr. Marcus Chun stood at the podium of the same conference room. But everything had changed. His worn janitor's uniform had been replaced by a sharp suit, and the nameplate before him read Distinguished Professor of Mathematics. Beside him sat Emma, the youngest person ever invited to present at the International Mathematics Symposium. Dr. Kellerman had moved swiftly after the revelation, offering Marcus a full research position at Cambridge with tenure-track guarantees. The mathematics community had welcomed back their lost genius with genuine excitement, eager to hear what insights his years of forced exile had generated. Dr. Webb had quietly resigned, his prejudice and poor judgment making his position untenable. The university had issued formal apologies and established new protocols to ensure brilliant minds would never again be overlooked because of their circumstances. Emma stepped forward to present her expanded solution to the Goldbach variation, her confidence radiating throughout the packed auditorium. As she explained her methodology, Marcus felt Sarah's presence in their daughter's brilliant smile and fearless intellect. The audience erupted in applause as Emma concluded her presentation. Father and daughter had reclaimed their place in the world of ideas, proving that genius cannot be hidden by uniforms or diminished by circumstances. Sometimes the most extraordinary discoveries come from the most unexpected places.